Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts and other stuff they're involved in. My guest today has gone through an incredible life transformation from the stigma of childhood sexual abuse, homelessness, and severe addiction to being a renowned addiction expert with 39 years of sobriety. He started his first holistic treatment center with only $300. Currently, he's a co-owner of JC's Recovery House, a published author of 3 books, an inspirational speaker, and the chaplain of the North Miami Police Department. He's working on opening another treatment center for his third act, specializes in holistic mental health and trauma recovery, has appeared on local and national radio and TV as a respected addiction expert. He's also contributed to over 80 scientific peer-reviewed research papers. Oh yeah, and by the way, he's been involved in martial arts for over 60 years. Was inducted into the World Martial Arts Congress Hall of Fame in '96 as a 5-time U.S. National Karate Champion and a Metropolitan AAU Judo Champion. Currently holds a 10th degree black belt in karate, a 1st degree in judo, and a 1st degree in jiu-jitsu. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. John Giordano. How are you doing today, sir?
Oh, Brian, I'm doing fabulous. I'm alive and above ground at 78. I'm doing good.
I love it. Can't ask for anything more than that, can you?
Nope. And being healthy.
That's good.
That's
also
good.
Very important. And I forgot to ask, what part of the country are you in?
Davie, Florida.
Okay, cool. My son went to college in Orlando, so I'm familiar with that area a little bit, and I have a good friend that lives in Miami, but otherwise I've only been down to Florida a handful of times.
Yeah, one of my students, Michael Sawyer, is the one that throws the U.S. Open.
Oh, okay, cool.
In Orlando.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what we like to do, with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know where that first interest came from, that first spark that kicked off your martial arts journey.
Well, that's an interesting story. First of all, I was in gangs when I was a kid. My family was like a mafia-type family. My father was a heroin dealer. My grandfather was a Shylock. My uncle was a hitman for the families. And matter of fact, he threw my wedding when I was 20. And the caterer insulted him, so he killed the caterer.
Jeez.
And I had to leave town real quick. And it's all in my book, The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a gang. One of my friends and I were driving by a karate school. And I says, I wonder how tough these karate guys are, because I was a street fighter. Mm-hmm. At 14 and a half, I thought I was the toughest guy in the world. And you know how that all goes with teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
So we went upstairs, and we were waiting for the class to end so I could challenge the karate teacher. Well, meanwhile, I had to get home early because my father would really, hit me with the belt if I was late. So I told him I wanted to join the class. My mother didn't want me to. And then my father talked her into it. And because at the time, this is 1962,
okay, you
had to be at 15 to get into a school.
Oh.
I went to that particular school. So I had to get a letter from my family, which I did. And I joined, and it was a jiu-jitsu class. And to me, I didn't know the difference, jiu-jitsu, karate. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I went into the class, and they're teaching us how to fall and all of this stuff. And then he got us around in a circle, and he was going to teach us how to block a punch. So he wanted a volunteer. So I raised my hand right away. So as he's talking to the class, I try to sneak punch him. Oh, by the way, I suggest don't do that. That's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Anyway, all I know is I winded up on the floor with a foot in my throat and a little round smiley face looking at me. Well, I fell in love with the martial arts. And I proceeded to go every day, 7 days a week, got out of the gangs. It really worked. And I'm very fortunate. I learned from 3 grandmasters.
Okay. One
was Grandmaster Hara from Hakaru Jiu-Jitsu, Grandmaster Visitation from V-Jitsu, and karate was Grandmaster Frank Ruiz and Peter Urban.
Oh, cool.
So I got a heavy-duty lineage. That's what I was telling you earlier.
Yeah.
I'm like a dinosaur. And anyway, back then, I was doing judo and doing jujitsu, and I took the judo championships, and I was on the jujitsu demonstration team in Zariga Avenue in New York City at the time. And Saturday we used to have all the classes used to get the judo guys, the jujitsu guys, the karate guys, and everybody used to work out. It was a free workout day. And we used to spar. My friend and I used to spar the karate guys and beat them all up. So the karate teacher, and it wasn't Frank, it was another karate teacher at the time, was complaining to the judo and jiu-jitsu teacher, look, if these guys want to spar with my students, they should at least join the karate class. So what happened was I walked in one day and my friend was in the karate class. I said, what are you doing here? He said, I joined. I said, okay, I'll join too. And meanwhile, we became a black belt in jiu-jitsu and judo. And matter of fact, I was brown belt with I don't know if you know Moses Powell.
Yep, I know the name.
So Moses and I were really good friends, and we both studied jiu-jitsu from Master V. And I wound up staying in karate. I couldn't do karate, judo, jiu-jitsu. Tournaments were winding up on the same days, and the teachers were fighting with each other and all this stuff. And no, we should go to the judo tournament. No, because I was the top judo player at the school. No, you should go to karate. I was the top karate guy, me and Carlos Serrano at the time. So anyway, I wound up staying in karate, and then Frank Ruiz started to teach karate. The other teacher left, and Ruiz came in. Now, back then, it wasn't like today. Today's a whole different breed of martial artists. I don't even know if you want to call them martial arts. It's more like acrobatics. But, there are some martial arts schools still around. People forget that martial art means it's a martial art. It's not so much a sport. But the way it's taught is not the way. If we taught the way I used to teach and my teachers used to teach today, we'd probably be arrested.
Yep.
So, like, for instance, Grandmaster Ruiz, in the summertime, he used to shut the windows, shut the doors, and put on the heat. And then we would train.
Wow.
We would do knuckle walk around the dojo. We would have to hold our shoes in our hand till our arms dropped. Kibadachi in a horse stance. We have to have somebody sit on our back. I mean, it was quite a grueling type of workout. I mean, people used to throw up, and he used to yell out to pick it up and put it in your gi and get off the mat. We learned how to do flying kicks over live swords, samurai swords. It was quite intense because he was a Marine DI drill instructor.
Okay.
And it was pretty tough. Well, one of the training methods was when one guy gets on the wall, another guy gets right on top of him, right in front of him. Then he would put a belt behind us. Okay, so the guy that's not on the wall couldn't go backwards. Then he used to hit you with what is known as a shinai, which is a slatted sword. And then we would go out punching each other and trying to block, not to the face, but to the body.
Right.
And that's how you learned how to block up close. And then he would separate you, and then you would spar. So that was some of the early training methodologies of Grandmaster Ruiz.
Wow.
And some of my dojo brothers were Ronnie Van Cleef.
Oh, he's been on my show.
Owen Watson, Luis Delgado. We had a whole bunch of champions.
Mm-hmm.
All of us were champions, actually. It was really a tough school. Then I moved to, before we became a black belt, Grandmaster Ruiz, I was leaving to Florida. And he didn't like the fact that I was moving to Florida. I says, well, Sensei, I don't want to live in New York anymore, and I want to go there, and I want to get my black belt in karate. I was an EQ, a brown belt. I wanted to get my black belt. So he says, okay, you want to get your black belt? You got to take first place in these two tournaments, okay? One was Gary Alexander's tournament, which was the biggest tournament at the time in the country. Guys came from all over the place to compete. And the other one was Pete Saragano's tournament in Staten Island, okay, which was another very big tournament. So I says, how about, can I take second place in one of the tournaments at least? He said, okay. So I was fighting, I think it was in Madison Square Garden at the time. And I had to fight 10 times to get to the finals. All my dojo brothers and sisters got eliminated. I was the last one left. So I was fighting for first place, and I won. So I took first place in the brown belt division. And the brown belt divisions back then were much tougher than the black belt divisions.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Because everybody wanted to be a black belt, so you had to really go out all out. And then back then, we didn't wear any gear. We didn't have any gear at all, zero. And they used to call it light contact. Well, Brian, between you and I, what does light mean?
Don't kill them.
Yeah, it never wind up being light. Just tell you that. Okay. So it was kind of like almost like full contact, to be honest with you. And guys were really getting banged up. But anyway, then I fought the next day. It was a Saturday tournament and a Sunday tournament, back to back. So I fought the next day in Pete Serrigano's tournament. And I was fighting Carlos Serrano, one of my dojo brothers. Now, I couldn't afford a gi. I used to have a judo gi. I didn't have a karate gi. And the judo gis are very big.
Yeah, very thick. Yeah.
Anyway, we fought for first and second place after fighting about 9 people. That's how it was back then. It was like, and there wasn't a weight class. So it didn't matter if the guy was 400 pounds and you were 80 pounds. It didn't matter. Whoever had to go next goes next. Anyway, we were fighting, and it was 2-2. And Carlos threw a side kick, and he was about 7 inches from under my armpit. And those gis are big. And they gave him the point. And I said, and I looked at, I was happy. I didn't care. I got second place. Because no. This really shouldn't be a point. They said, no, it's a point. And that was it. I said, Carlos, I don't care. Okay? So I got my black belt now. So that's what happened.
Nice.
Then I winded up going to Florida. Well, the Floridian people, the Southern boys, didn't like the New York boy, especially me. I was very egotistical. I was 17 and a half going to Florida. And I used to have a comb in my gi before I fought. I used to comb my hair. And
that's great.
And I never forget, I was sparring. I was doing kumite in a tournament, and Urban was refereeing. And I used to, back then, everything was static. Nobody would. They either fought in a horse stance or a kibadachi stance. Nobody was running around the ring like they do today. And I used to run around the ring and hit them from a distance, and then move in and do all of those kind of things. And Urban pulled me aside, and he stopped the match. And he goes, "Come here, Giordano." He says, "Why are you running around?" I said, "Sensei, no disrespect, but it's hard to hit a moving target." So he said, "Okay." So I beat the guy anyway. So the way I learned how to move around like that, because nobody else was really doing it except Mike Stone.
Yeah.
I was out in Washington, D.C. competing at Joan Reed's tournament, and I was a green belt. And I never forget it. I hit a guy with a side kick, and they gave him the point. So Grandmaster Ruiz jumped in the ring. I started cursing at the referees. It was, I says, "Oh boy, now we got to go fight this whole place." And Joan Reed came over, and then they talked, and it was a mess. So that was that incident. And then in New York at Gary Alexandro, I met Johnny Bachivas. Now Johnny Bachivas was one of the pioneers in Florida that brought the martial arts, down there to Florida. Him and a few other guys. Anyway, I met him in New York, and Sensei Ruiz told him, "Hey, listen, Johnny's going to Florida, take care of him." And he said, "Oh yeah, no problem." So I go to Florida. I go into his place where he was teaching, which was in North Miami Beach. It was in there, right in the center there that he used to teach.
Okay.
So I walk in, and he goes, "Oh, I know. I remember you, Giordano." I said, "Why don't you get your gi up?" Oh, I said, "Okay." So I put my gi on, stretch a little bit, and I sit down, and he goes, "Hey, would you like to spar?" I said, "Oh, yeah, Sensei, fine." So I said, "Which black belt do you want me to spar?" He said, No, I want you to spar the brown belt." He said, No. I said, "I'll fight the black belt. It's okay." No. But it happened to be this guy, Steve Beatty. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that name.
No.
Steve Beatty was a weightlifter, big guy. And it wound up being years later, he wound up killing people in the spar, and he wound up getting arrested. And it's a whole story about him, unfortunately. But anyway, he was the brown belt, but he could beat all the black belts up. So we get in the ring, we start walking around. I throw a round kick, tap him in the head. And then he throws a side kick, and he would have broke my ribs if I didn't block.
Wow.
So he looks over at Bachivas, and Bachivas smiles at him. I said, "Oh, I'm familiar with this. I'm from New York. I know what we do." So Beatty came running in. I get him with a short back kick, picked him up on the ground, couldn't breathe, and dropped him on the floor. And I looked over at Bachivas, says, "Well, thank you, but no thank you. Have a nice day." And I left. Well, from that day on, they were sending black belts from up and down the state to beat me up to my dojo. Because I had a little school, and I used to teach at the Carolyn Hotel, and they used to bring these guys by, right? So I used to bang them out and then send them back to their teacher. So that's kind of how I started building my reputation in Florida. And then I threw a tournament at the Doval Hotel, which was really interesting. And I called up New York, and I said, "Listen, guys, I need some help down here because I got all these guys, and it's getting really kind of crazy here." So they came down 2 carloads of guys. They come down. It was Owen Watson, Louis Delgado, Grandmaster Ruiz, Ronnie Van Cleef, Bobby Chin, all the top competitors in the Nisei Gōjū system.
Mm-hmm.
There must have been about 8 or 10 of them that came down, 2 carloads of guys. So when they got there, at the time, we would have a black belt meeting. So before the black belt meeting, I used to teach dancing in the hotel. And I'm on the stage dancing and everything, and the black belts were in the nightclub, and they're all looking and laughing and, having a good time at my expense because I'm doing go-go dancing and Latin dancing and all this other stuff. So at the time when we had the black belt meeting, I had to ask if I could compete. And they said, well, we don't usually let the people that are throwing the tournament compete. But in your case, we'll let you compete. And they said, but none of your dojo brothers, your people in your system, they can't referee while you're in that ring. I said, well, okay. So tournament starts, I line up in the black belt division. So every time I line up, they put the top guy next to me. So I had to make sure every point they had, they couldn't really say it wasn't a point.
Mm-hmm.
I got all the ways up, long story short, to 9 people we went through, or 8 people. I don't remember. It was, at that time, it was a lot of people you had to go through. It was a big tournament. Now, there was a guy named Bob Bremer. Bob Bremer was one of the toughest guys in Florida. Matter of fact, he went to Okinawa and he beat up all the Okinawans.
Wow.
He was about 6'4", 6'5". Good competitor. Really good competitor. Big guy, and everybody was kind of like afraid of him. But I'm a New York kid, gang banger. That wasn't in my DNA. So anyway, Louis, myself, and Bob Bremer were fighting for first, second, and third. So they put Louis Delgado up against me. Okay, so they were trying to eliminate me. So Louis and I got out there to spar, and we ran into each other. Louis fell down and made like he hurt his knee and he couldn't compete. He said, Johnny, you got to fight this guy. I said, okay. He disqualified himself. So Bob and I got together to fight, and it wound up being 1-1, 2-2. And the last deciding point, matter of fact, I got a picture of it. Some guy took the picture of the winning point. Where, see, when Bob come running at people, everybody would run the other way, but I would run into him. So it was a whole different kind of, he wasn't used to somebody doing that. And anyway, I hit him with a reverse punch right in the face. And I won the tournament. Well, the whole place was dead silent. And I called him up the next day and told him it was an honor to compete with him. And him and I became friends.
Nice.
And he was an interesting gentleman. He used to go, like Oyama would go into the pasture and like punch the bulls in the head. And, that's who this guy was.
Yep. Wow.
And he would never talk to anybody. Would just sit with his arms folded and look around the room. But when I came, him and I used to talk about, we had a mutual respect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how my reputation really took off after fighting Bob.
Wow.
We just kept going through on and on and on with the karate in Florida. It was like, I used to teach in Liberty City in Overtown. Herbie Thompson was one of my black belts. He was a Vietnam guy. He came back. He was Special Forces. And before he went to the service, he was a gang leader in Liberty City and Overtown. Now, Liberty and City and Overtown were in the black community, and the white people were afraid to go there. I'm from New York. To me, it was just a regular neighborhood, So anyway, when I met Herbie, another friend of his brought him to my school. I was teaching on the beach in Surfside at the time. This was 1965, 66, 67, 67, I think, 1967. Anyway, he brought Herbie. He was a brown belt at the time. And he said, he wanted to spar. So I knew that routine, okay? He wanted to see how tough I was. So anyway, Herbie was pretty tough, but not tough enough. And I used to foot sweep him, kick him in the chest. Anyway, he decided that he wanted to join my school. So he joined. Herbie was a heck of a competitor. He was a street guy, gang guy, similar to me. And, he couldn't kick very well because in Vietnam, he fell into a hole with punji sticks and messed up his legs. But he was a heck of a hitter. But his hands were messed up too a little bit. So I had to teach him how to punch in a certain way so he wouldn't mess up his hand. So he used to come over the top of the people's guard and hit them in the chest. And he used to come in like a freight train. So that was Herbie.
Nice.
Matter of fact, I think Herbie fought Bill Wallace. He fought Chuck Norris. He fought, I think, all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Herbie had a school, opened up a school in Liberty City. And at the time, I had long hair down to my shoulder, had a mustache. I used to walk around with no shoes on most of the time in my karate uniform. So I pulled up to the school. It was a YMCA, Carver YMCA. And I went there and I walked through the pool hall and everybody stopped playing pool. And then I walked through the gym and everybody stopped working out. And then I walked back to school, was in the back. So I go back there and one of the guys from the gym, big guy, matter of fact, his arms were bigger than my leg. I mean, I was only about 168 pounds. And anyway, he says, hey, white boy, you think you can kick my ass? I says, yeah. So I said, get on the mat. So he got on the mat, and he tried to sneak punch me, and I round kicked him in the solar plexus, and I knocked him to the ground. Meanwhile, Herbie walks in, and he goes, oh, I see you met my teacher. And that's how I started teaching all the kids in Liberty City and Overtown. And today I got, I don't know how many black belts, a lot.
Wow.
And all these kids, and I used to take them to Miami Beach, to my dojo. But in Miami Beach, at that time, at 6 o'clock, going on to sundown, anybody that was black had to leave. Very, it was really interesting. So I had to sneak them in my car and sneak them out of the dojo if we stayed late. And the kids never forgot that. Anyway, then we had a tournament in New York, a Nisei tournament, and I took my students up there, and we beat everybody. So, and instead of my teacher being happy, he was angry. So I don't know. It was one of those things. And that's basically some of the things that went on in the martial arts back then. It was very different.
Yeah, definitely. How long did you run your school for?
Years.
What made you decide to stop running a martial arts school?
Well, I got involved in other things. And, I always had my hand in teaching. What happened was one of my schools, I just opened it up. I built it with my hands, with me and the students. And it was a beautiful dojo. And we had like a 40 by 40 mat. We had weight room in the bag and a sauna. And I had an office with a little pond. And it was really a beautiful place. And what wound up happening was one of my friends, who happened to be a smuggler at the time, okay, he's one of the black belts, and he needed a place to stay. So, back then, I'm a recovering addict myself. I'm coming up on 40 years of recovery. But at the time, I was using drugs. Not all the time, but, on the weekends, like back in those times, that's what people did. Much different they do today. Today, they're killing themselves. But anyway, I let him stay there, gave him a girl, and gave him some Quaaludes and a bottle of wine. And I got a knock on my door at 3 a.m, and I looked at him. He had my little box where I kept my money, and he had all charcoal on his face. I said, what happened to you? He says, your school burnt down. I said, what? He said, your school burnt down. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we fell asleep. We had a candle. Candle fell over, and the place went on fire.
Jeez.
So I never forgot that, because my diplomas, I never thought that heat actually took the ink off the diplomas.
Oh, wow.
And melted the trophies.
Jeez.
So, I had a ton of trophies. They all melted. And I go in there, and the firemen, they destroyed the school. And I didn't have any insurance.
Oh.
So the windows were broken, the glass, all the mirrors were broken, the mat was burnt. And I just wrote on the window, the spirit of the karate shall never die. And I went into the park, and we taught karate that night.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And that's where I was teaching until eventually it got kind of rough, because either it rained or the red ants would bite you. And, so that changed.
Wow.
So I had a lot of different schools. I taught in Hialeah. I had Latin group, black belts. I had Jewish kids from Miami Beach. And then I had African Americans from Liberty City and Overtown.
Okay. I was reading somewhere about one of your students who was blind.
Oh, yeah, David.
Yeah.
I had that's an interesting story. I had a school in 71st Street in Normandy Isle in Miami Beach. And this guy comes walking into my school, bouncing off walls. I'm looking at him like, I said, this guy's stoned. He says, I want to learn karate. I says, yeah, but you can't do drugs. I says, what are you doing? He says, no, I'm blind. I says, well, where's your cane, man? So he says, oh, no, and I don't need a cane. I don't want a cane. I says, oh, all right. So I figure I'd discourage him. I says, here, I'll show you what is signed. Sign this. It says, in case you die here, I'm not responsible. So he said, okay. I said, well, what do you want to get out of this? He said, I want to be a black belt. I said, okay. So David was a very interesting human being. He was about 135 pounds. He had retinitis pigmentosa. He actually can see shadows, but he really couldn't see. And if something moved, it was gone. So anyway, if you just touch David, he would fall on the ground screaming. So I would kick him to get back up. I know that sounds terrible, but that's the way I used to teach. Anyway, when I used to stretch him, he used to scream and then fall on the ground. I used to go through the same process. So eventually, I was teaching him, but I couldn't get through to him how to learn, because if you're blind, your reference points are different. So I had to blindfold myself to teach him. So this way, our reference points were the same.
Okay.
Long story short, David, I put him in a karate tournament to fight. He said, no, I can't fight. I don't know where the person is. I said, don't worry, he's in front of you. So the guy that threw the tournament said, oh, you can't have him. He's blind. He can't fight in the tournament. I said, look, that's discrimination, and I'll sue you. He said, all right, if you want him to fight, but if he gets hurt, but we're not responsible. I said, yeah, okay. So anyway, I walked David into the ring, shoulder to shoulder. He didn't have his cane. That's another story about the cane, by the way. Anyway, I walk him in, and this big, heavy-set guy was going to fight him. So they bow in, and David beats him. And the guy found out he was blind. The guy sat down and cried. Wow. I mean, what do you say, blind guy beat you? And David almost beat the second guy. And then he got disqualified. I just did that to show him that he can do anything. Then he wound up learning forms, kata, and teaching him kata. He wound up becoming a national karate champion in forms. Urban and him were like best friends. Urban loved David. They used to talk all the time. And they taught him super empathy, which is the highest form in the Gōjū-ryū system. I think it has 300 and something moves. I mean, you got to realize somebody blind learning these moves. Sighted, it's hard enough because you got angles and you got, the way the technique has to be together and balance, and really quite interesting. Wow. So, I tell these stories to people. They go, yeah, but if they talk to anybody down here in Florida, they know, yeah, we know David. And David was one of my best students. But he refused to get a cane early on. And one time he walked off a pier. Oh, wow. 25 feet down because he didn't have his cane. He didn't see. He was lucky he didn't break his legs. They got all sprained. Another time he walked into a wall. And finally I said, we're going to the lighthouse for the blind. You're getting a cane. I don't care what you say. So I finally got him a cane. So that's the story with David.
That's cool. What do you think led you to the teaching side of martial arts? That obviously became a very important part of it. What in your background, or kind of where did that interest come from in teaching?
Well, I'm the one that was teaching when I was a student. They always had me teach because we were the top students, me and Carlos and Earl Monroe. I don't know if you know any of these names.
Oh, yeah.
And we were the top students, and we used to teach the lowest students. So I always was teaching. And I love teaching. I love helping people. I love teaching and things like that. Back then, it was a whole different way of looking at the martial arts. It was Buddha. It was spirituality more. It was more comradeship. It was more respect. You walk into a dojo, a black belt, you bow. Today, you walk in, nobody just even pays attention to you. They took the backbone out of the martial arts, a lot of these places. And that's unfortunate. Because they did an article with me in the Black Belt magazine on official karate. I don't remember which one. And I talked about building the martial arts, build better human beings. Well, it's not about fighting at kata. It's about building confidence, consistency, being focused, not being egotistical. Unfortunately, there's a lot of ego in the martial arts. I was one of them at the time. It's a point of where you have to develop your character, Being a tough guy, a real tough guy is a guy who faces his demons, not beating other people up.
Right.
No, that's what I got out of it. Then after that, I wound up getting too heavy into drugs. And I wound up getting, my family did an intervention on me. And I was laughing. I said, who's doing an intervention on them? I said I would never be like them. I didn't do drugs till I was about 19 years old. Then I said I would never become like my family. And I became a drug dealer. I became, I used to do collection work for the smugglers. I used to do a lot of unsavory things. I used to train one of the cartels in Cartagena. I trained as bodyguards, all kinds of crazy stuff that you do when your brain's not working right. So anyway, I wound up going to treatment. I had what I call a spiritual awakening in treatment. I cleared up. Long story short, I got out of treatment. And I wanted to help other people that suffer from this disease. And I wound up going back to school because I quit in the 9th grade. And this is why I wrote the book, The Kid from the South Bronx Who Never Gave Up. It's on Amazon, by the way, to help motivate people. Family I came from. I only went to the 9th grade. I got molested when I was 8 and a half. My father went to jail when I was 8 for selling heroin for 4 years. He went to jail. I got molested by boys in the neighborhood. Then I got molested by my babysitter when I was 9. She was 14. And all the trauma that I went through in life. And what I do is when I do group, and I'm also a therapist. Mm-hmm. I also have a PhD. All these things that I accomplished in recovery, it was like a whole new life. So what I did in the martial arts and became a pioneer in Florida in martial arts, I became a pioneer in addiction, mental health, and psychedelic medicine.
Nice. That's
been my journey. And like you said earlier, I'm with some of the top martial artists that I know. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are dying off,
Yeah.
And also I'm with the top addictionologists and mental health people actually in the world. So that's why I'm on a research team of scientists and researchers and clinicians from about 12 universities. I lecture all over the world today. I write books. Here's a kid. I'm an inner city kid, only went to the 9th grade, went back to school. The martial arts really gave me discipline. It gave me focus. The problem was early on, I didn't pay attention to those learnings.
Right.
And then they kicked back in when I got off the drugs. I never got arrested. Also, now I'm also a chaplain for the police department. I'm a traumatologist. I work with police officers that have been in shootings, vets coming back from war, people that have been molested, been raped. And I incorporated martial arts into therapy.
Very cool.
So those are some of the things I did with my martial arts. And then eventually I started my treatment center years later with $300. And in 2012, I sold it for $45 million.
Wow.
Now, if you would have told me that early on, I probably would have punched you in the face thinking try to make fun of me.
Yeah.
So that's why I wrote the book. I want people to realize it doesn't matter what family. If you don't mind, I'm going to read a little excerpt from this.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is what I do my best to explain to people. There is one thing in this world, one special lesson, one constant that has guided me through the turbulent waters of life. Most people know this infinite rule, but they ignore it or simply do not follow their life lessons. That is, no matter what, no matter the circumstances, the obstacles, the people that get in our way, or things that slow us down, follow this one simple rule. Never give up on your dreams, never let go of your passions, and especially never give up on yourself or a God of your understanding. My name is John Giordano. I'm a recovering addict who turned $300 into $45 million. I was blessed to become extremely successful, and I would like to share my story with you. This is how my life was transformed and how I was saved from falling into the abyss of hell by following this one rule. I learned and how to have a life worth living.
Wow, that's cool. And I will definitely put a link out there for your website and your books and everything. And definitely going to be ordering a copy. It sounds like it'd be a great story to read.
Life's not just about making money, and it's about becoming, in my opinion, about becoming a better human being.
Mm-hmm.
Being helped by helping people less fortunate than you. And spirituality is the foundation of anything. I'm not talking about religion.
Right.
I'm talking about spirituality. Learn to be kind instead of right. Do your best not to lie, cheat, or steal. Don't hurt yourself or another human being. Reach out and, help people less fortunate than you. Those kind of things. And the martial arts really is what it teaches you, is really how to be that kind of person. But unfortunately, sometimes we only hear what it says. But hearing is biological. We need to listen to the lessons that we learn and then what we hear. And listening is a skill. If you don't put that into practice, those skills, then all you're doing is hearing things.
I love that. It's a great statement. I like it. What made you decide to do a podcast? I just noticed on your website you host a podcast.
I got a couple of podcasts. I do one, the pros and cons of psychedelic medicine.
Okay.
And it's like anything else. It's like a martial arts school. All right, it's almost similar to the addiction field. It's really interesting. There are people that are only interested in making money. They're giving belts away. They got all these different things, locking people up on contracts. I'm not saying contracts are bad or good, but, if the focus is for them to put their all into something, and if I'm going to teach you and put my all into it, you should also put something back. I understand all that. But a lot of these places are not really teaching karate. They're teaching I don't know what they're teaching anymore, to be honest with you. Now, not all. I don't say all of anything.
Yeah.
But a lot of them. The focus is too much, I believe, on tournaments and all of that instead of building character. Self-defense is common sense. And first of all, you don't want to use your skills if you don't have to.
Right.
And most of these kids, they don't realize that if you hit somebody, they fall, hit the head, and they die, you may go to jail.
Right.
So it's not, if you want to be tough, be smart.
No, that makes sense.
And only defend yourself if you need to.
So if people come check out your website, johngiordano.com, what kind of stuff can they find on there?
All kinds of things. It's John, the letter J, Giordano.com.
Okay.
And they'll see television shows, they'll see radio shows, they'll see podcasts, they'll see, I threw a concert with James Brown.
Nice.
The Help Liberty City in Overtown. I did plays in the Theater Performing Arts, Kabuki Theater plays. And believe it or not, the concert and the plays were all done while I was using.
Really?
Yeah. And we had, it was interesting. I worked for a flea market, USA, in 79th Street. And what happened was back it was 80, 81, right after the riots. And nobody wanted to go into Liberty City or Overtown. And they were afraid. What I did was I told one of my students owned the market. And originally he wanted me to buy a booth in the flea market. I said, no, I want to work for you. He said, oh, sensei, but I know you know karate, but this is, it's a big business. I said, look. He said, well, how much money do you want? I said, give me $1,000 a week. He said, what? I said, I'll tell you what, give me $250 a week. And if I meet all the quotas and then some, I want my $1,000 a week. So he gave me really difficult quotas to make, selling the boots and all this other kind of stuff. But not only did I do that, I surpassed it.
Nice. And
I went there with $1,000 a week. Anyway, they wanted to have a grand opening like nobody has ever had. I said, okay, first of all, we need a theme. We're revitalizing Liberty City and Overtown, number one. So I went to all the deacons and all the churches. I'm singing and dancing. And then went to the SBA people, Small Business Association, and to teach people how to run a business, how to buy wholesale, how to get QuickBooks, to do all their accounting needs, all of this kind of stuff. And then I had an idea. I said, I want to invite President Reagan to the grand opening of the flea market, okay, because we're going to have James Brown, because my friend knew James Brown. So everybody laughed at me, and they said, oh, sensei, come on. The White House is going to come to a flea market? I said, yeah, you never know. So in the book, you'll see the letter from the White House, by the way, because I know nobody believes you anyway.
Right.
So if you go to my website, you'll see all the people in the concert. Anyway, I got a letter back from the White House 2 weeks later. Nobody could believe it. They said they're sending a representative because due to scheduling problems, the president wouldn't be able to come. And, they really check you out before anybody comes to see you.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, Carrie Meeks came. And later she became Senator Meeks. She was the head of the State Department or something. I don't remember. Anyway, she went running around. And, my karate school was in Liberty City in Overtown. So I knew a lot of the big players in that community. And how I was helping the kids. And, even though I was messed up, I was still helping the kids. My addiction didn't take completely over yet. So what happened was she went to the Martin Luther King Foundation, and they presented me with a Martin Luther King Award on stage. And ready for this? 60,000 people showed up.
Wow.
It was an outdoor concert. That's what the television station said. And if you look at the video, as far as your eye can see in every direction, there was people, shoulder to shoulder. And then I used all my black belts to do all the security. And it was really interesting. I had Hispanics. I was the MC, and I had Hispanics there, band, and we had James Brown, and we had the Caucasian people there, white people there, all right, and the community people there. And the police departments were freaking out, thinking if a riot breaks out, this is going to be something they can't contain. They had SWAT people on the roofs. I mean, it was really like heavy duty. But I knew a lot of the police departments because I used to teach the police departments. So anyway, we had the concert, and the last note on James's guitar, it rained.
Oh.
And everybody dispersed, and we had no problems at all.
That is cool. He'd be just fun to see in concert live. I bet that was amazing to be up there on stage and experience that.
Oh, it was really cool. Well, James also did cocaine.
Yep.
And him and I became good friends.
Cool.
Yeah, I did a lot of crazy stuff. I for the flea market. I also it was Christmas time, and I says, you know what? I got a great idea. I want to dress up as Santa Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer for the balloonist, and I want to go up in a hot air balloon and throw flyers out over the city about the flea market. They said, no, you can't do that because we'll get tickets for littering. I said, no, you don't understand. I want to throw your money out over the city. They said, what? I said, look, I'm going to show you. I made a sticker and I put it on a dollar bill and I turned it into a flyer. And we threw money out over the city.
Wow.
And we were on every radio station, every television station. We went up 4 times.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was really unbelievable.
That's fun.
So that's some of the things I did, you know.
So in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy that stands out at the top of your list?
One philosophy. Okay. It's the same philosophy I always tell people. Never give up. It's hard work. You don't compare yourself to anybody else. The only competitor that you're against is you. And do the best you can.
Nice. And now, what are your thoughts on something like MMA and the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm really not a fan of it.
Okay.
For one reason. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're back to the gladiator days. We're back to Rome. And why I say it's not a good idea is because people don't realize that these people have brain damage. You can't get elbows in the head, kicked in the head, and expect your brain not to get damaged. Look at football players.
Yeah.
And they need to put these people in hyperbaric chambers. That's oxygen under pressure. That works with TBI cases, traumatic brain injuries.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody wants to talk about that because they don't want to bring a light to that. And these guys, if you even see how they speak sometimes, look into their eyes, it's kind of like glazed over sometimes.
Yeah.
Not a good idea. We're really, this is gladiators time.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to, and they're not making that much money. Only a few that make a lot of money.
Right.
And remember, people think, well, man, an MMA guy, he's really tough. Well, yeah, they are really tough. But remember, there's rules.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you have rules in the street, it's not the same.
Right.
Because in the street, kick you in your balls, excuse my expression. I put my fingers in your eyes. I'll hit you in your throat.
Yep.
None of that's allowed.
Exactly.
It's a whole different ballgame. And it's unnecessary. These guys getting beat the way they're getting beat up. But it's all about money.
Yep. How about your worst martial arts related injury?
My worst?
Yeah.
Which one? Okay. My judo, the Metropolitan Area Judo Championships, I got thrown on my head.
Ow.
So what happened is my neck got all messed up. Over the years, I got paralyzed in one arm.
Oh, geez.
And thank God my friend was a chiropractor. He helped my arm atrophied, and they wanted to operate and all this stuff. I couldn't even hold the cup. I thought my karate career was over.
Wow.
And this was years ago. And anyway, I worked out in the pool. They stretched my neck. We did all kinds of things. And thank God that was okay. But just recently, 7 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
my neck, I started getting pains down my arm again. And I went to 3 different doctors. They all said, you got to operate. So I just had an operation 7 months ago. They put 14 screws on my neck and 2 rods and 43 staples down my back.
Dang.
That's that injury. Now, the other injury is your hips.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if you know Joe Hess.
I know the name. Yep.
Yeah, Master Hess. Okay. He studied under Urban. Bill, Superfoot Wallace there.
Yeah. Yep.
He's got
He's
hip
been on the show.
replacements also. So does Chuck Norris.
Yep.
So does a lot of old timers. I have 2 hip replacements. Those are some of the things, it's really interesting how the Chinese and the way they taught the Okinawans and the Japanese and all this stuff, they don't really do high kicks. And all these, these kicks that we do,
Mm-hmm.
it wears out your rotator cuffs and really messes up your hip joints. And when you overstretch, you really mess up your joints. After years, we're like old cars, the fenders start to fall off, you need a new alternator,
Oh, yeah. I got a few fun questions to wrap up the interview. Doesn't have to be exactly 4. I've had people give as few as 2 and as many as 8, but 3, 4, 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts.
Oh, the top guys?
Yep.
Okay. Dead or alive?
It's up to you. It's your Mount Rushmore. You get to build it.
Oh, okay. Well, you got Ronnie Van Cleef.
Nice.
Dr. Bob Goldman, he's also a high-ranking belt. I think he's a 6th or 7th. I'm not sure.
Yep.
He's the one that, if you look, he's in 36. Ripley's, believe it or not, he's unbelievable, this guy.
Yep.
He went from being broke to becoming a billionaire. and he's a martial artist. And you got Grandmaster Ruiz, Grandmaster Urban, Mel Weiss, Louis Delgado was another one. There are a lot of guys. I mean, I can go on forever. George Cofield, Thomas LaPuppet, Moses Powell, Mr. Visitation, Pete Serragano, Frank Ruiz. I mean,
you got a whole mountain range there.
I got a whole, forget about it. I got 2 mountain ranges.
Okay. All right. I know you said you weren't really a fan of MMA, but let's say you were going to step in the octagon and fight. What song would play as you walked into the cage?
It'd be a little thing. I guess Rocky would be a good one.
Okay. Theme to Rocky. I like it. All right. How about a favorite martial arts book?
Favorite martial arts book? Well, one of them was The Dojo by Peter Urban.
A lot of people talk about that book. Never read it. I need to try to find a copy.
And another one is The Art of War.
Yes. Great book. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Favorite martial arts TV show? Actual TV show?
Yes.
Oh, it used to be, what's his name? Carradine.
David Carradine, Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. A lot of people pick that one. That's a popular one. All right. How about a favorite martial arts movie?
Oh, that's the one with Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris and
the Way of the Dragon.
With the dragon, I forget the name of it.
Yeah, with the Colosseum in Rome, the fight scene.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Nice. All right.
Well, interesting with Bruce. Mm-hmm. He knew me and I knew him, but we never met.
Really?
What happened was he sent me a letter, and I never kept the letter because I didn't know who Bruce Lee was at the time. And he sent me a letter. He wanted me because he heard about me teaching the blind. And what happened was Louis Delgado and Ronnie and them were working out with Bruce over in California there with Chuck Norris and all those guys. I was supposed to go there to California. They called me up, Johnny, you got to come here, man. We're teaching all the movie stars. And I said, nah, I don't want to come. I got this girl I was in love with. And I was doing the plays. And I said, nah, I don't want to go there. But anyway, Bruce wanted me to teach one of his students.
That'd have been cool.
Yeah. And then my friend, Alex Ben Block, one of my students also, he wrote The Legend of Bruce Lee.
Okay.
And he's writing another book about Bruce Lee, and I'm in the book. I quote that he wanted from me.
Nice.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I could have went to California. I would have been hanging out with all those crazy guys.
Who knows how your life would have turned out then?
You never know. You make a left or a right, you never know what happens.
That is true. Okay. All right. Now, this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've ever seen, favorite movie fight scene?
Fight scene in a movie. I don't know. Oh, Jay White. What's his name?
Oh, Michael J. White?
Michael J. White.
Okay.
Yeah, I like his moves. And Reacher.
Yeah, he's got a lot of good
also
ones.
Another one.
Well, before I let you go, anything that we maybe forgot to mention or we want to be sure to get out there, and like I said, I'll put a link to your website and to your books and your podcast so everyone can check it out. But anything else you want to get out there quick?
Yeah, well, anybody has any mental health or drug and alcohol problems, please contact me. It's great. A faith-based program, by the way, JC's Recovery Center.
Okay. Does that have online options too? It's not all in person?
No, it's in person. You can't do drug treatment and mental health. And I don't believe in that, Zoom and all this other kind of stuff.
I want to clarify just so people know if they're going into that. So
right.
Good to know. Point. Well, like I said, I'll put links for everything, but I'm definitely looking forward to ordering your book and reading and learning even more about your story, but just an amazing story. And I can't wait till this episode comes out. I think the listeners are really going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and if you like it, write a review.
Yep. Cool. Well, John, this has been a blast, man. I could chat with you for hours about martial arts, an amazing life, an amazing story, and continued success.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.